Okay, so now we just brewed some coffee. Okay, you have your cup. Maybe we should. I'm going to do just something before I drink it, because I always like to do this before I taste it. But I always say that we should always taste it before we actually see the numbers here.
Okay.
So, like, to train your sensory skills on how is the body and how is the taste. Is it over under extracted? Is it balanced? Maybe the body is too low, too high for me. You know, kind of. Once you see the numbers, you're already conditioned. You already know what to expect. You know. So the first thing we're going to do, we have this syringe. This is the VST filters. So you can reuse it if you want them. They have like COF and ESP, which is like if you use it now for a filter, you just with alcohol delete the ESP. And you know, next time you reuse it, you'd use it for coffee.
Okay.
If you had used it for espresso, you do the opposite. You would erase this part here. And then you know that it was being used for espresso, so you could reuse it. Because they're quite expensive, so that's why the idea of you can reuse them if you want. Okay, so basically I just attached the filter into the syringe, and I'm now going to immerse a little bit underneath the liquid.
Yes.
And I'm going to pull, which is trying to get some coffee out. It should be easier than it looks like. Just the syringe is already reused. So I have here enough liquid. I don't need more beverage. I'm going to take it out, the filter. Why? Because all the insoluble solids are in here. So I don't want to pass it again. So what's the point in filtering? And now I'm going to put it on a glass. The problem is the syringe. I think the rubber is a little bit dried. Okay. And I'll let it cool down here. So now I'm ready to go and taste the coffee. Maybe you should do a cheers like this. How it is? How you feel? This is a Costa Rica geisha. It's freshly roasted, so it still needs to kind of blossom, you know, kind of breathe a little bit. But it tastes sweet to me. Not very high acidity. And
I didn't have any acidity at all.
You don't feel the acidity? No. Okay, it's okay because I'm very sensitive to acidity. Perhaps you're more sensitive to bitterness, which means that my threshold, the concentration that I can detect is lower than the people that don't have the same sensibility. So I do feel the acidity even when people say there's none. But if there's bitterness, because I'm not so sensitive to bitterness, you would probably notice, and I would say, I don't notice. It doesn't mean it's not there. I just don't feel it. You know,
yes,
it's not.
I feel it now.
The bitterness. I just feel kind of the acidity because it's still kind of in this part of my tongue. It's still like itching there. You know, like making some sensation there, like almost salivating.
I don't know why I feel it from my outside. It's a little bitter. From how you can say, not from the
tongue, but the high palate on the rooftop of your mouth. Okay. This is something we can train, you know, all the things we are feeling, what does it mean? And unless it's like excessive bitter, which is not because I would feel it, it's still nice. I think it's a balanced coffee. It's not an amazing, like super high acidity coffee, but I think I even like the body has, it feels like it has a nice kind of body. I don't know, maybe it's the extraction was good. So what I want to explain is that we decided while brewing it to put 20 grams.
Yes. And
Afonso was doing it and he poured 260 grams of water. Okay. Okay, so to understand what ratio he used, this is the recipe. Recipe means I use 20 grams for 260 of water. So with this one, I can just calculate the ratio. I don't have to do anything. And the ratio, like an espresso, is just dividing the out, or the water in case, by your coffee. So 20, which 13. Is, do you mind to see how much it is?
13. No, I need to own my head. 260.
Divided by 20.
13.
13. Yeah.
1 to 13.
So 1 to 13. Okay. So when we look at this... Estás a passar em frente à câmera. E estás em frente a essa câmera.
Tá bom. Isso aqui.
Já provaste?
Já, tá bom. Sim, pode. More hard work for him, he has to cut. So basically, when we look at this ratio, because in filter we have this ratio, and it's very similar to this graphic. It's very similar to the graphic we had for espresso. What's the difference here? We still have the TDS,
Yes.
and as explained before, which is the strength or solubose concentration, it's a smaller value, okay, because we have, of course, less body. But the extraction, if you see, you still have 18 to 22.
Ah, okay.
This is the ideal, okay?
Yeah.
So whenever you have a higher TDS, but you have the nicest, the ideal extraction, you just have a strong body. Well extracted, but strong. And if it's weak, like you have low than the minimum that I said it was ideal, 115, it's a weak body. Whenever you come into the left side of the graphic, you have a weak and under-extracted. So if you're here, it's weak and it's under-extracted because it's on this side. All this side is under-extracted. Here is well-extracted, but is the right TDS, but it's under-extracted. So sour, and here is very strong and under-extracted. So too much TDS, but sour, the taste.
Okay.
And that right side is the opposite. Strong, over-extracted. Here is just the ideal TDS, just over-extracted, and here weak and over-extracted. Okay, so apparently what we did was at 1 to 13, which is this diagonal line. So once we know the TDS, which we're going to measure, we can actually by the graphic see how much is my extraction. Because imagine that my TDS shows, I don't know, 140, imagine. So 140 is this line, horizontal line. I go through this line until the 113, which is here where they intersect, and then I go vertically down and I would see my coffee was under-extracted. In brewing, what happens many times is that the coffees you like the most are actually the ones that are not well extracted. They taste good to you, but when you measure it, they're not well extracted. And once you do something to make them well extracted, they don't feel as pleasant.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, so maybe it's a hard thing to say, but I would say sometimes just, forget about the device, forgetting about measuring, just do the best you can. Taste it. If you like it, it should be okay.
Okay, yes.
Okay?
The one we like is the better one.
Yeah, sometimes it is. I mean, my personal opinion and experience is that. Okay, so we have here already the ratio. But imagine that we do the opposite. Okay? I wanted to brew coffee, and I don't want to do the 1 to 13. I want to do some nicer ratio. So I ask you to choose one of the ratios, a different one that you would like to do. Okay. So we can see how we can calculate.
1 to 17.
Okay. So if you tell me, Sandra, can we do it all over again with the ratio of 1 to 17? The first thing we're going to have to do is to see how much of water we're going to pour into the coffee. Let's assume that we still want to use the same 20 grams for whatever reason. So what does this mean? This means that 1 gram of coffee is for 17 grams of water, H2O. Okay, so what you would think? Okay, I would just do the math. 20 grams of coffee is for how much of water do I have to pour? But you cannot do that. Okay. What you have to do is think that actually 1 gram of coffee is for 17 grams of water, but for 1 liter, because you are aiming to know how much coffee per liter should I use, to respect this ratio, 1 liter means at 93 degrees means 963 grams of water equals 1 liter at 93 degrees. So in case you ever forget it, you have it written in here. Coffee to water ratio by weight, 1 liter equals 93 grams at 93 degrees.
Okay.
So you'll never forget, okay? It's in your graphic. So now you do the calculation. And this, so you want to know the recipe, right? So this equals 963 divided by 17, which is, if you don't mind,
963 divided by 17. 56.6.
56. 56.6 grams of coffee per liter of water. Okay, this is your recipe. Now you just have to do the same calculation. If 56 0.6 is what I use for 1,000 grams or liters. And I want to use 20 grams, how much I have to use. And you just multiply this one by this one and divide by that one. So 20 by 20 multiplied x, so 20 multiplied by 1,000 divided by 56.6.
56.6. 353.3. 353.
53?
353. 353.3.
Did you multiply this by this and divide by the other one?
Yeah.
This cannot be.
20.
Yes, it's water. Sorry. 353.3 grams of water. You could also do the same. Normally when we go for this, we think, okay, I want the 1:17 ratio and I'm aiming to get 300 grams of beverage. You have to think that you'll never get 300 grams of water in the end, or beverage. If I'm pouring 300 grams, there are always some retained in the bed, in the coffee bed. So in the end, for example, in here we pour 260 and we got 210 out. So like 50 grams were retained in the bed, okay, in the filter and in the bed. So, okay, if we wanted to do a ratio of 1:17, we would put 20 grams of coffee in our filter and our dripper and extract and pour 353 of 3 grams of water outside, okay? But we did different. We did 20 grams, we poured 260, we extracted 210, okay? Now we're gonna measure this TDS, okay? So I'm gonna erase all this and I'm gonna measure the TDS and we're gonna see if the coffee is well extracted or not, because apparently by the graphic, just looking at the graphic and seeing what ratio we used, apparently it's not going to be a well extracted, or at least a nice TDS with nice body coffee. But let's see. So how we do it? I already have this cool down here. You open it. Okay. It's the same we did in espresso. We're going to squeeze, let it release a little bit, and then put it there without touching the lens and without trying to make bubbles. So we don't want bubbles because they might disturb the reflection of the light. This is enough. We just close it. We press go, so it's turned on. We go to menu and we want coffee because it's filtered, and we do go. And it says it's ready, and we press again, and now it's reading. So first he understood there's a sample there, and now it's reading. And it's saying 1.6. Okay, and just in case, I'm going to press again, because sometimes if the beverage is still a bit hot, it might change. It didn't change. It's cold enough. So I'm kind of surprised, or not. I mean, I felt that it had a nicer body, and it actually has a really strong body. Okay, we are here, 160. And we know we use 117. So perhaps our coffee is actually well extracted. Okay, but let's confirm. So the formula to calculate extraction is exactly the same we use in espresso. So extraction, what you want to know, equals TDS multiplied by your out, which is in the case I would put here beverage, divided by how much coffee you used, dry dose. Okay, so your extraction is actually 1.60 multiplied by 210, that we weighted the coffee after we brew it, divided by 20 grams. And our extraction?
16.8.
16?
Point.
Oh, okay, so it's under extracted. So this is the opposite we got. Not the opposite. In espresso we got like low TDS, but a nice extraction. Yes. And this we have like a high TDS, not even the ideal one. It's way higher, but under extracted coffee. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens in brewing is that sometimes you could say, okay, but if it's under extracted, it should be quite sour. And I didn't even felt the acidity in the coffee. Yes, because when you have too much body, sometimes it kind of disturbs the way you perceive the taste. Okay, so that's why we didn't felt it as sour, because it has all this intensity of the body. Okay, but for me, although it's under extracted, I wouldn't care. I would still drink it. I liked
Yes,
it.
so am I too. Yeah.
To clean this one, we do exactly as we did the other one. So you take a Kleenex, you absorb the liquid as much as you can so it doesn't come out, and then use that alcohol pad. It doesn't disconnect, it just shuts down on its own whenever it wants.
Okay.
If you use it a lot, you should calibrate it often.
Okay.
If you are using whole day, checking. Otherwise, I would calibrate it morning or afternoon if I use it all day. Okay, and then the alcohol just evaporates and it just dries and it's ready to use again.
Okay. That's quite nice. And yes, now I understand more about the brewing too. Yes, I was the one I am in the training. Yes, I understood the espresso part. Now
It's quite similar.
Yeah, it's quite similar.
The only difference is in here you have the EBF because you're not pouring the water on top. And in here, you actually pour in the water, so you can actually measuring water itself. What you need to understand is whenever somebody asks you to brew some coffee and they give you the recipe, like use 20 grams per 250 of water, this is a recipe. So you don't need to do all these calculations that we did prior, taking into account the density of the water, that you don't need. But whenever somebody tells you, brew me a coffee with a ratio of 1:16, then you have to go into account the density of the water to check how much coffee per water should I use per liter of water. Okay.
And also, when we brew it, we should know the water. Do we have to measure the TDS or the water, or it will be what's going to be the perfect ratio of the mineral?
Yes, 125 to 175 was like the ideal. Maximum, I would say 250 parts per million or milligrams per liter. So what you can have is either use a filtered water, that you have a TDS meter for water that you just check how much TDS it has. Although nowadays we understand that the TDS of the water, which is the total mineralization, is not as important as actually the total hardness or the alkalinity. But for example, for people at home, normally they would brew with either tap water, which has chlorine normally, so it's not good because of that. Because the ideal water is the pH close to 7, which is neutral, like 6.5 to 7.5. And the right amount of TDS, which is 125 to 175. So I don't have, imagine at home, I like to brew coffee, I don't have filtered water. I use mineral water to drink. Can I use the mineral water? Yes, you can. Okay, at least it doesn't have chlorine. Try to choose, and you can read in the label, the water that has a higher pH, higher but never higher than 7.5. So don't use alkaline water, because it's not very good for coffee. And try to check the ones who have more mineralization. Okay. Because so you can actually see in the label. Normally here in Portugal, the water that we have mineral for us to drink is low mineralization. There's only like a few brands that have a higher mineralization. So we just look at the label and check which one is the best. When you go to the supermarket, there's a bunch of waters there available, so we just read the labels.
Now I understand more about about the water, because I was trying to understand the ppm or the water, and then yes, I was thinking making the same video about that too. That is why.
And I was going to say, do you have any questions? And now in my head I had a question, like if I was in your shoes, like, okay, Sandra, but I have high TDS, but I have under extracted coffee. So I even liked the TDS, but I didn't like the fact that it didn't felt any acidity in the coffee, that swing. So how can I move my extraction more into the middle to be perfect? Because I'm in 16 almost 17, I'm still here, right? So to make it a higher extraction, you have to either increase the extraction time, but remember, we were using a gravity method. So how can I increase extraction time? Either you make stops, so you pour and then you stop, you don't never let it dry, you just pour again. So instead of just continuously pour all the water,
it's
just
a little more long.
Exactly. Or you can also put it a finer grinding to try to move the extraction more onto the middle. The problem is that the final grinding will affect basically the TDS. So
A little bit more.
yes, so ideally I would say just try go with a higher extraction time.
Okay.
Okay, because if you increase a little bit the extraction time, you can get a more extracted coffee. It's always an attempt error.
Okay.
And in the end, I would say don't stress much about it. Try to use another thing that would actually impact a lot is change the ratio. Because using this kind of ratio, 1 to 13, of course, we are getting higher TDS.
Yes.
So I could decrease the TDS by changing the brewing ratio, by changing it for a smaller, the number is bigger, but it's a smaller, because you are actually putting more water for the same amount of coffee. So moving it here. And if you just want to keep the TDS, but you want to change this, it had to be by the extraction time or the grinding victory.
Okay.
Okay? So it's complex. Many things affect the coffee.
Yes, yeah, it is.
And imagine if we had used mineral water, it will always be under extracted, no matter what you do. If it's low mineralization, you need you need the solids of the water, okay, to extract, or the minerals, let's say like this, of the water to extract the solids of the coffee. That's why you cannot brew with distilled water. You will not extract nothing.
Nothing, yeah. Okay. So never use the distilled water.
No, just to calibrate the refractometer, nothing else.
Okay, if we want to use the distilled water, I think I learned something from it. They put some kind of mineral they added to it. Yeah.
Normally when the barista goes to some kind of championship, even it's barista, AeroPress, whatever, they tend to do use the distilled water, and then they have this brand like Third Wave Water, which is the powder. And they say if you add one of these capsules powder to 1 liter of water, you have like the ideal water for coffee.
Okay.
So yeah, it could be, but it's expensive, right? So to brew at home coffee like that, I don't know. Maybe it's better to get some nice water from the supermarkets, I would say.
That is really nice, and yes, now I understood more, and yes, I can explain more about to my people too.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
It was really amazing that I came back here, and yes, this is always feel the same and the smell.
You're always welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Always welcome, anytime. Okay.
Okay, so can you say something, or maybe
What should I say?
add something about the coffee, or maybe if you have to say about some kind of like home barista, can you say something?
Okay, piece of advice for home baristas. It's if you are like a home barista, you really like coffee, it's really hard, in my opinion, to have a good espresso at home, because it's very expensive. A nice coffee machine, a nice grinder for home is expensive. But if you are a home barista and you really like coffee, I would say just explore the world of the brewing, because it's so much cheaper to have different brewing methods at home, and you can try and learn so much more about extracting V6s, or gravity methods, or have a siphon and do vacuum filtration and just try. Because the interesting part is that you can use the same coffee, but in different extraction methods, they taste completely different. It doesn't look like the same coffee. So I would say just start to explore this brewing world of the pour-over methods and slow coffee.
Slow coffee, yeah.
That you can enjoy more, because it's a bigger cup and we have it for a longer time to enjoy. But if you really love espresso, well, either invest or choose a nice coffee shop to drink your espresso and just filter it home.
Because past 2 months or 3 months ago, in my country, one of the coffee shop, it was the specialty coffee. It was the structure of the coffee shop is quite different from the other shop. It is really nice, and also coffees are quite amazing. People are quite surprised with the price, because normally when we have, for example, a cup of coffee in the normal coffee shop or some kind of coffee shop that you can find on the street, it will be around maybe like for example 50 cent in Europe, maybe in my
currency?
In my currency, it will be around maybe like 1,000 Czech or maybe 2,000 Czech.
And it's so much money for them, right?
Yeah. And then one they open it and they serve for one specialty cups of coffee. They serve like €3. People were quite surprising. It's too expensive, and like they have like a lot of discussion about it.
Yeah.
And then because they are not used to this kind of thing, and then now I can see like 2 or 3 shops are open again, the specialty coffee. So yes, people need to understand about the process of the coffee, and because we have a lot of process going on before when we had the cap, right? So yeah, so I'm some people trying to ask me too. Yes, I explain something from the process, harvesting, processing, and when we have some kind of roasting process and brewing process, yes, that's time they understood something too. But I'm glad they learned. But now I would say they will be learning something more in the future
Awesome.
too.
Oh, good. Glad to help.
Yeah. This video where we head to the home barista and then the barista who are heading to, who are trying to improve their skill, it will be more helpful for them too.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
You. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
so much for inviting. Let me come here. See.
Always a pleasure. Anytime.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you.
Sandra.
Thank you.